Flash Season 3, Episode 7, Killer Frost. It's a very fun episode. There's a lot of good elements, but it's also one of the most dark episodes to date when it comes to the Flash. And it's a really good episode, but also all the different moving parts don't always go together in the most organic way, even though they're all good. But overall, Killer Frost is a good episode. Basically, the plot line behind it, of course, is we saw Savitar at the end of the last episode holding up Barry, about to kill him. And we figure out, or he drags Barry around and, threatens him a couple times. And Savitar does look visually stunning, I would have to say. But it is annoying that the next villain in the Flash is unfortunately going to be a speedster. I feel like the Flash writers can divulge from speedsters being the villain as far as the Flash, but I'm going to wait to judge Savitar till we actually learn more about him. But after basically Barry gets his butt kicked, Caitlin comes with Cisco and Caitlin freezes him. But of course, the more Caitlin uses her powers, the more she becomes Killer Frost. And so we see her go off the deep end, go to the interrogation room, and try to kidnap one of Savitar's minions, because she believes that if she can get to Alchemy, of course, who's the middleman between Alchemy's followers and Savitar, then he can, restore her back to her old state without her powers. So she's really afraid, and that's the reason Caitlin goes off the deep end in this episode, and she creates a lot of emotional turmoil for the team. And it's actually very great, because we've never seen Danielle Pennebaker ever play this version of Caitlin Snow, except on Earth 2. We get to see her sort of go off the deep end, sort of become more like Killer Frost, thus the episode title. And she really also stirs the pot with Cisco and Barry, because Cisco didn't know that in the alternate reality his brother was still alive. So she drops that bomb, and so there's emotional fallout for sure between the characters. And so this main plot really works well together. Another thing I would have to say is I love how Tom Cavanaugh plays HR in this episode, and how he teams up with Joe West, and they sort of have this good rapport. We haven't seen those characters interact in a way like this before, but in this episode you sort of have a buddy up between Joe and HR, and it's very funny and interesting. And actually, HR has some deep advice for Joe about how he should be treating his family and stuff, and how Barry, he mentions about Barry how he always has hope, and that's a common theme throughout the episode too, because Barry's always helpful despite all this. And so they have a great plot line. They try to break out Wally prematurely, and then they have to track him down and basically get him back to normal. And while I like that storyline, whenever it actually push comes to shove and they track down Wally, it seems like they resolve that whole entire crisis way too soon. It feels like they're just, oh, okay, Wally has powers now, everything's good. When really they could have stretched it out longer, and I think it would have made it more interesting. But I did like to see that buddy up between Harrison Wells and Joe West. Of course, we know Julian Albert was Alchemy before. You could obviously tell, and if you couldn't, you must have been missing something, because as soon as Alchemy, was gone, Julian was gone. And so I'm glad they finally gave that reveal and didn't continue to act like, oh, they weren't connected at all. But I really do like Julian Albert this season, and it seems like he's under the sway of Savitar, not of his own will, not of his own want. And so that's an interesting thing that's explored at the end of the episode, and they'll probably explore the rest of the season. So hopefully the whole dynamic between Julian and Savitar is explored more, and they become better villains as far as better fleshed out, and I'm sure they will. And they just aren't at this point. Now, all these storylines are great in the episode for the most part, but my problem is they sort of all seem jumbled together, and it wasn't cohesive. And so while I like this episode a lot, and there's a lot to love about this episode, it had moments of greatness, I would have to give it probably a 8.0 out of 10, because it really didn't, not all the different plot lines worked well together, gelled, even though they were great in their own right. Props to director Kevin Smith for directing this episode, though. He did a fine job, and I wouldn't mind him directing another episode of The Flash, because of I don't know if other directors would have managed the load of this episode because a lot happened. But I hope you've enjoyed my review for The Flash Season 3, Episode 7, Killer Frost. Again, I'd give it an 8.0 out of 10. Remember to like and subscribe for more Flash content. This has been Jonesy from Joneser TV, signing off.